And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ani Avedissian, who has had 2 near-death experiences and multiple UFO encounters. Ani, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. It's lovely to be on the show.
Ani, let's start with your first NDE and go from there.
Okay. As I was making notes for your show, Jeff, it actually turns I've had 4 NDEs. So
Wow.
I will take you through those. The very first one was approximately 4 decades ago in Northern Ireland. And I was working there. And as much as I can make out, I was hit very hard on the head. And the next thing I remember is I was awake in some sort of makeshift facility. And I was sitting on a filing cabinet looking down at my body that had some sizable bruises on my face, and I looked rather limp and unhappy. And so I clearly figured out that I was in between worlds. And I was expecting this great thing of God to come and sing songs of hymns to me and all sorts of things, and give me all these life choices. But instead, I met one of my spirit guides who came and said to me very simply, look, there's no damage to your brain. You'll be fine. Just get back in and get on with your life because you've got another 70, 80 years. So I thought about it for half a second and I got back in. And that was about as exciting as that first one went. And life did go on, and I don't have brain damage, and everything was fine. My most notable NDE, the one I enjoyed the most, I would say, was years later when I had just got to Oregon. And I was helping a friend of mine pack up to move out of state. And at some point she said, look, I've got this rather exotic tea from, I don't know, Ulaanbaatar or somewhere or whatever. And it's really good. Would you like to try some? Well, I never turned down a cup of tea because I was raised in England. It's like kind of like a little cultural thing. So I drank this tea and I passed out. I just passed out completely. And when I came to, I was in the most beautiful I have ever seen in my entire life. It was the quintessential English meadow with all of the wild flowers. And I could hear the buzzing of the little bumblebees. And the air was sweet with a fragrance that I recognized years ago. It was like a lime blossom, something like that. And I kept walking down this meadow. And I was on this gravel path. And I knew it was gravel because I could feel and hear the crunch under my feet. Glorious spring day. And as I walked, I felt so light. I felt as if all the cares of the world just never, ever existed. I didn't even know my name. It was so wonderful. And in the distance, I could see a gate. Again, this quintessential English country gate, the little wooden thing with the slats going that way and one diagonal piece of wood the other way. And I knew that if I could get to that gate, and if I could open that gate, and if I could get to the other side, I would never, ever have to live on this planet again. And in that moment, that was very attractive to me. So I kept walking and walking, and it seemed like forever. But I got to the gate, and the smell of the blossoms was so strong. It was almost, if I was in physical form, I would say it would arouse me. You know, it was that beautiful. Every cell of my light body anatomy was saturated with the blossom. And I reached out my hand to open the gate. And you can't really make this stuff up, but a Viking held it, and with the pommel of his sword, he smacked me. So my hand went away from the gate. So I thought, expletive. I put my hand back on the gate. Whack! And I thought, no, this isn't going to happen. I'm going to get to the other side of that gate. Clearly, I can't fight this Viking. I'm a little woman and he's big. But I tried one more time and thwack. And then I came to, and I was lying on my friend's sofa in my physical body, and she was hovering over me. She happened to be an acupuncturist, which actually turned out to be a very good thing because she had medical training. And she's standing over me and she's swearing because she cannot get the needle, the acupuncture needle, to get into this one little place here that would have brought me back to consciousness. And to this day, I actually have a giant freckle there, which I never had before that day. So she's laying over me going, expletive, expletive, come back to me, come back to me. And I did eventually, unfortunately, come back, and came to, had another kind of tea, a proper kind of tea, one that doesn't kill you. And then we finished packing up her stuff so that she could move out of state. But that was the most beautiful experience ever. And from that moment on, I would say, I've never feared death.
Do you think it's possible that the Viking was your guide from the first NDE?
I recognize the Viking from an earlier life, because I had a very notable life as a Norseman, crossing over to England, and then I had a notable life crossing over to Iceland. So I have very strong Norse past lives. So I think he was somebody who guided me, and he pops in from time to time when I'm in trouble. Yeah. But that was the most beautiful experience. And I always thought, gosh, when the time comes, when I've given this life all the meaning that it has for me, and it's time to make that transition, it's going to be the most beautiful thing in the world, and that gate will be there.
Do you feel that you have some mission here, and that's why you keep getting sent back?
Clearly, because otherwise it will be, just so easy to go to the other side and stay there. But that's not why we were created. We were created to be creators. We were created to be cosmic space adventurers, to go out to find new planets and find fragile bodies in which to incarnate, to mess up those worlds and then to fix them, the expansion of consciousness. My personal mission is to assist in the restoration of the Republic of America, which has a sacred purpose. So in that respect, I'm not going to die until mankind is back to some semblance of sanity and common sense, because I am essentially a spiritual counselor. And I want sanity, common sense, and people thinking for themselves again. So that's really my purpose, to assist in people reclaiming their minds from the opinions of others who might want to influence their minds for less than perfect purposes.
Did any of these NDEs change your spiritual path in any way?
The first one was not a big deal. It was more along the lines of, oh yeah, it's not my time now. The second one gave me a true sense of my divinity, that I'm part of something that actually is beautiful, exquisite, fragrant, and beyond all understanding, which is why we had to translate it into a vision of an English meadow in an English farm somewhere. So in that respect, it absolutely assured me that serenity is the vibration that people call unconditional love. So it did jog me quite a bit forward into my deep work. I've always had a bar of joy below which I can never fall. I can have bad days, I can have good days, but I can never have a truly bad day and stay there, because that NDE, Jeff, taught me that I'm a cosmic space adventurer and life is eternal.
Well, that's nice. You just have a baseline of a certain level of joy, right?
Yeah, that's it. And if you understand what it means to be, I'm not a religious person, but because how can we limit the glory that is cosmic creation? I'm not religious, but I do have a sense that I am part of supreme cosmic intelligence. And once you realize what that means, it basically means you're an unblemished cosmic soul brimming with potential. It means you're an individualized manifestation of source energy, and a perfect molecular structure of all that is. If you really sit down and think about what that means, you can't actually allow yourself the luxury of a bad day, because that you understand that that's ego programming, that you're succumbing to the false part of your ego. So that NDE was massive for me, to take everything that that had been drummed into you intellectually and actually have it as a practical experience. And now it's archived as a cosmic understanding in every fiber of your body.
Are you saying that we are all collectively God, or we just have a piece of source energy within us?
I'm saying that our smallness contains everything that the allness contains. Now, when you have these people into these visions of a man on a cloud and, you know, and all of this, I see the universe and cosmic creation, because of my shaman background, in a slightly different way to most traditional religious people do. I believe that there are multiple universes. I believe that each one has a god. A god is a commander-in-chief. My belief system tells me that each one of those gods was chosen from the last layer of what we call angels, rather immature term, but what we call angels, to be created. And those were the ones that one morning, I guess, woke up and went, oh my God, we are not, oh, they didn't probably say, oh my God, because we didn't have any gods then. They probably said, oh my. All we've been doing is experiencing in non-physical form, and yet we woke up this morning and we hit our heads on something. Those were the last layer of angels to be created that realized that their thoughts made matter. And they were the ones that were able, for the first time ever in creation, to experience both as ether beings, spirit beings, and physical beings. So my belief system in that is like, what is a god? Every universe has a god. They all come from the one source, from the beginning of time, which was, you know, in my culture, a rough translation is the beautiful islands of paradise. We think of source energy as pure potential with nothing happening in it. But of course, that can't be true. There's always something happening somewhere. First Big Bang happened, and I hold space for multiple Big Bangs, and I hold space for string theory. It makes a lot of sense to me that they could both exist. When that first Big Bang happened, and out of the pure potential came all things, we would call the first layer of source. Let's just say source wakes up one morning and goes, right, this is boring, I'm perfect, I'm this beautiful ball of performance. What am I going to do with this? I've got to get some action. So it self-expresses, puts a line up, down, left, right, whatever, throws a canvas around it, makes a circle, whatever you want to call it. It makes a space for itself. And it sends itself out of itself to look at itself for the first time. Of course, this was not physical. Okay, we call that first realm archangels. And in ancient shaman lore, that first layer of archangels co-created with source, backwards and forwards. Okay, we're out here. What do we do now? Right. So they do what they did. And then in time, those archangels created other souls from them. First layer of angels co-created. And then the other layer of angels created another layer of angels. And that went on for a bit until there was enough formation of cosmic matter to actually form the first planets, the first universe. So, and the god of that universe was chosen after multiple failed experiments with, why do the planets die? Oh, perhaps we need a sun. You know, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about this sort of thing, you know, today. But when all those layers of thought had finished, we started with the first universe. And then it needed a commander-in-chief. So in my mind, that's what a god is, who works in perfect co-creation with source energy.
Now, when you're talking about these archangels, are they the same angels as Michael and Gabriel?
Yeah.
And
those are the names we have given them. That's how we have labeled them, personified them, so that we as humans, as humanoids, can relate to them. Yeah.
Some of my near-death experience guests find themselves in some realm where they know everything. Unfortunately, they can't bring it back, but while they're there, they know everything. Are you aware of that realm, and would you say that is what source energy is?
I don't think that any of your guests are going to find themselves back in source energy pure pod, the pure pod of source energy, because that even if you're the most enlightened person in the world who's had multiple enlightened experiences, there's still a great amount of cleansing to happen before you go back into the uncreated mass. But I completely relate to what they're talking about. They find themselves in a higher vibration where everything suddenly makes sense. And they feel like they know everything, because what's happening is they're in alignment with a vibration where they understand everything in the particular environment in which they are. There isn't just one realm that they go to like that. There are multiple realms, and your vibrational status guides where you end up at any part of the journey. But I relate to it. It very much feels that way.
Some of my guests wind up in a place that we call the black void. I kind of feel like it's a realm outside of all these physical dimensions or physical places. What do you think that place is?
I really wouldn't know. I have never visited the black void. You know, there are multiple realms where you can visit. There are places that you can go where, that are holding areas where lost souls who are not supposed to die, but are in transition somehow, can be held until somebody comes and gets them. And that might be what they're talking about. I've had experience of those.
That's
But
interesting.
perception is unique to the individual, so it's difficult to answer that question with any degree of accuracy.
I feel like there's like 5 different outcomes from NDEs. And another prominent one is that people go to this place that's literally like a waiting room in a doctor's office or waiting for your accountant or whatever. And I wonder if that's the holding area that you speak of.
I would imagine. And the environment is going to be tailored to something that makes you uncomfortable. Most of the experiences in that area that I've had have been with people who are, I would say, sort of atheists, who believe that there's nothing on the other side. And again, this sounds really odd, but I did at some point do some work on what I call the other side. My soul would go and act like a little social worker for people who are confused, you know. So we took our spiritual counseling across dimensions, as it were. And I've helped out on a few occasions where people who did not believe that there was anything on the other side were very, very confused by being in one of these holding areas, which looked very much like a medical waiting room, you know. And I've been able to go in there and talk to them. And what happens then is you have to gently explain to them, you know, life is eternal. There's nothing to fear. And at some point, the universe or planet has a heaven. Ours is called nirvana. Okay. At some point, somebody from nirvana would come that they could recognize and would take them into the next stage of their evolution in that place that we call heaven. So it could very well be that. And again, their level of awareness and their vibrational status guides what that place looks like to them.
So what do you think the point of all this is? And what I mean is, why do we keep reincarnating over and over and keep coming back? And do we have other choices to go other places?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We definitely, well, we do have other choices. We can go wherever there's a vibrational match. You know, somebody from upper third D here is not going to reincarnate into an upper fifth planet or whatever. We do have choices. We do. Why do we keep coming back? I have always said that mankind is in some sort of a karmic loop-de-loop. You know, before we thrust ourselves nations, we do make conscious choices about what we want to experience. We talk to our soul group. We choose our parents. They choose us. We choose people that we're going to have experiences with on the planet. And we don't plan it in great detail, but we do what I call plot markers. For example, somebody might say, and some of these things sound ridiculous, but somebody would say on the other side, in between incarnations, and recreation areas when we believed we were gods and bods. But when we forgot about that, we created these in between lifetime rest and recreation areas. So you die, your soul goes to heaven, blah, blah, blah. You do all the stuff. And then at some point, because we are created to create, you're going to go, this is boring. I want to go and get some challenges. So you plan your next life and you talk to your soulmate and you'll go, well, what do you want to do in your next life? Well, okay, let me look at all the lifetimes I've had. I've been terrible at forgiveness. I take everything personally. I don't forgive people. I don't forgive myself. I'm mired in self-loathing. I want a lifetime where I can learn to forgive people. And so you would actually probably choose to be born poor, blind, disabled in 1932, because people are going to treat you like shit. And you will have ample opportunity to learn forgiveness, which once you're in physical form sounds rather arse backwards, because forgetfulness when you're actually born, and everything's on mute. But that's how we've set up this universe. So it'd be very easy for me to say, it's just all about overcoming emotions. It's all about not taking things personally. It's all about remembering that you are divine, which means you're objective, you have common sense, you're serene, and your vibration itself is a sacred space. So all of us, our bigger goal is the expansion of consciousness and the reconnection to that absolute direct knowing that we don't want a planet where we worship God. We want a planet where we represent God. That is the purpose of these multiple and tedious incarnations.
You mentioned that we want to remember that we are divine, and many of the people here, including me, I would say the audience, and probably beyond that, have heard that we're eternal beings, that we're, divine and other things. But how can we actually confirm that for ourselves? How can we truly understand that we, or have a knowing, unless we've had an NDE, that we really are eternal beings?
Divine is a word that we use to make something quite special, isn't it? And in my mind, either everything is special or nothing. If we don't have these NDEs and go to these realms, which, again, how do we know what's real and what isn't real? Then the only way, I believe, if you want to feel that I can't understand how anybody would think there's nothing beyond this. I personally can't operate just as a random being that came from nowhere and is going nowhere. So common sense to me would dictate that if there is something outside of myself, I should see if I can hear its voice. And one of the things that we recommend a lot is, in this very busy and fractured and noisy world, is practice sitting in silence for a few minutes each day, so that you can hear what your own mind sounds like, what your own body sounds like. And be comfortable, free-floating, knowing that you don't really know anything, but you are a cosmic space adventurer. And in the silence, you're going to explore perhaps subtleties that you miss every day in the grind of life. That's a good place to start.
Well, while we're speaking about cosmic explorers, did you start seeing UFOs before or after your first NDE?
I have always had communication with extraterrestrials. Now, UFOs, I've seen a few, but it's more direct contact with extraterrestrials. That is my thing. I mean, the ships are fun, but you don't know if they're coming out of a US Air Force base. You don't really know. Because we do have some technology, apparently, that's quite remarkable these days. But as a child, I remember very young in my suburban London home, there was, I would say, a silver-skinned, they're reptilians. Everybody, when I mention the word reptilian, everybody goes, oh, because they think of them all as the Dracos. But the vast majority of reptilians are actually smooth-skinned. They're a sort of a shiny, gray, silvery glow to them. They don't have much of a sense of humor, but then they have IQs of like 350. They really excel at the mental acuity thing. And I've had visitations as a child in my room for years with hang out, try to smile. They're not very good at smiling, try to smile at me, and they would impart some sort of code to me. Like numbers would come out of their handheld device, and it would float into my aura, and it would be taken into my aura into orbit. So I now understand, of course, that I have a soul agreement to work with extraterrestrials, to help Mother Earth join, not Mother Earth, she doesn't need help, to help mankind join the Intergalactic Federation. And we will see cultural exchange centers in our lifetime. I don't know about you, I'm going to be 66 this year. I plan on living another 30 years. We will see extraterrestrial cultural exchange centers in our lifetime. So that's how I grew up. One of my most notable, I think, extraterrestrial contacts started about 30 years ago. I started having dreams where I was part of a cadre of people. And for some reason, we all wore those nasty little blue Mao suits that the Chinese communists wore, years ago, but, they were comfortable. And in my sleep that I was going in these ships and doing things. And that's been an ongoing thing for me. So I never read too much into that. I thought, well, it's probably happening, but it's happening in astral form. It can't be happening in physical form, whatever. Until one day, one morning, about 5 a.m. here in Oregon, I had the strangest sensation that I couldn't quite get back in my body. That does happen. People call it sleep paralysis, whatever. And my body's laying down and I'm sort of sitting halfway up, and it's really, really uncomfortable. And I look towards the door of my bedroom, and there is a giant reptilian in armor. It wasn't one of the smooth-skinned, in armor, imposing, not threatening, but he looked very much like, the impression he gave was, if you've ever met a grizzled sergeant major in the US Army who's been in there for 35 years, he's seen everything, he's fed up with everyone, that is the persona that he had. And I looked at him and I said, oh, you drive the bus. I mean, it wasn't a bus, obviously, it was a spaceship that takes us to the places where we have to rescue the people who are trapped. And he smiled and he goes, yeah, that's me. And I go, you've never come into the house before? And he goes, no, it was very difficult to track you down this time for whatever reason and get you back from wherever you went, because he said you went AWOL from the group. I do that, apparently. Sorry, apparently I do that. And I said, well, how did you track me down eventually and find me and bring me back? And he said, oh, I got your fingerprints. I said, oh, you tracked me down with fingerprints. How old-fashioned, how retro, how vintage, He goes, by the way, we're done here. So I just wanted to say thanks and have a great life. I thought, oh, okay. So anyway, I got up, went to the restroom, splashed my face. And I looked at my fingers, and my thumbs were completely blistered. And there were blisters on each of my finger pads. And I thought, ooh, did I really go in physical form? Or is this one of those things where you do something in astral form, but it's so powerful that it actually shows up in your physical body? So that was a very interesting one for me. And to be in the presence of one of these non-smooth-skinned reptilians, I don't know if I can describe the feeling. It was exhilarating in a way. It was arousing, not sexually, but it was arousing and exhilarating in ways that I've never felt before. That was very interesting.
Is it possible that you were a reptilian in a previous life? And that's
No.
why? No?
No, I don't think so. I've thought about that. Reptilians aren't from this universe. Not originally. They're from a different universe. And they came through on a cultural exchange program. I'm not joking or making this up. It's as real to me as anything is real to anyone else, but this is my experience and my background. There was a cultural exchange program where the reptilians were allowed to come to this universe to learn love and light, and to be a little bit softer. What I say, to sing Bob Dylan songs and have some kind of a reptilian renaissance, maybe light up a blunt or something, and, chill the way that humans chill. And then humans went to their universe to learn technology and critical thinking and to up their mental acuity. The humans came back. The reptilians did not go back. That's why we have them here. And that's where, they started on their, the true dragon, much about strength, honor, conquest, and domination. So I've not had experiences outside of this universe, and I'm pretty sure I have never, ever had a reptilian incarnation. I'd make a cute lizard, I think, but, nothing beyond that.
Well, what about the Greys or the Nordics or any other ETs? Have you had contact with them?
The Greys, astrally on several occasions, especially when we're working with people who believe they've been abducted. Yeah. The Grey, again, when you say, the Greys, there's many different types of Zeta, not reptilians, the Zeta people. There's many different type, just one race. But the ones that came to this planet because certain parts of our DNA are compatible with theirs, came here because they lost the ability to reproduce through natural biology. They would have sex and nothing happened. They were all inert. And so they had to clone themselves and transfer their souls into clones. And you lose empathy. You lose your soul spark when you do that. You don't lose your soul spark. You lose your ability for your soul spark to let the spirit inhabit the human. So they originally came here because they had soul contracts with humans who volunteered to share their DNA with them so that they could create children that could feel again. So the human race doesn't realize it, but we've always offered ourselves up to other races who genuinely wanted to improve their characteristics. So all of these people that were abducted, I do not actually believe they were abducted. I believe they had a soul contract, but they didn't remember it for whatever reason. I have a few ideas about why. And so it felt rather traumatizing to them. So they're here for that purpose only. They're not here to colonize. They were here so that they could breed again and be normal again and have families and have feelings. The Nordics, etc., most of your Palladians, and very blonde, and ridiculously handsome. The men look like Prince Valiant, and the women look like elven goddesses and, whatever. They don't need anything from us, not the Palladians, and the higher levels, which I believe the Nordics are part of the Arcturians, a lot of Arcturian influence there. The Arcturians are a very, very highly evolved race. And they are here in service to Mother Earth and her soul. And as a side effect, of course, it helps mankind. They're here to help us. Look, Earth was going to go into Ice Age around 1913. Mother Earth cried out, her soul cried out to the God of this universe and said, all of this killing, this war, and I know there's going to be another one, and I know there's going to be another one, it is killing my body. I'm trying to take care of these humans, but they're killing each other and they're doing ridiculous things, and there's outside influence. That would be the reptilian influence. Any negative influence that has come into this planet has generally, 95% of it is reptilian. So she cried out her soul to God, and God activated the Palladian fleets. And there were Arcturians as well, of course, but he activated primarily the Palladians that came, and they did, a bit of energy work around the planet, and did whatever they needed to do to install what they call a universal light grid to keep Mother Earth. Mankind sorted itself out.
Many people say that the ETs will not allow us to have a nuclear exchange, World War III nuclear Armageddon.
Hmm.
But we did have, Japan was bombed in World War II. Do you agree with that, or do you think they would let us destroy ourselves?
I don't think the ETs have a say in it. The God of this universe put the Kabosh on nuclear explosions after Hiroshima. And what was the other one? Nagasaki?
Yes.
Yeah. Because, and the reason was not so much because it caused chaos. When a human or any sentient being is in the vicinity of a nuclear explosion and they die from it, it fractures the information in the light body, the chakras, the layers of the aura, and of course the mind, which is the part of us that lives forever. And it was an absolute bugger, apparently, for when these souls died from the explosion, a nuclear explosion, and went to heaven. It was an absolute challenge and a half to be able to regroup, to collate the information and put it back together in some cohesive form. Those souls were very traumatized by what the nuclear explosion did to the light body anatomy. That's why Creator put the kibosh on it. So there are probably people all over the world going, we do not know, great Creator, great Dictator, why it did not explode. We did everything properly, but nothing is happening. That's Creator who told the God of this universe, go ahead and do that.
At some point in your life, you developed the skill of remote viewing. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. I have done work for various organizations in my life, some malevolent, some benevolent. Remote viewing, the way a shaman does it, is actually an astral projection. You project your essence to a location where, unless you are in a place where there are other military shamans who can pick up on you, you are free to roam and collate information undetected. So you're literally leaving your physical body behind, sending your spirit body, if you will, over to do some exploring and actually, see things. And you'll be able to see pretty much the same way as you would with your physical eyes, with some exceptions. When you work for organizations that perhaps may not officially exist, they also have people who have the same skill set as you do. And the enemy there. So you cannot astrally project. You're not allowed to project your essence there if you can be picked up somewhere. So you learn to bring the location to you. And it's you don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to be a shaman to learn it the military way. It's just a lot of tedious exercises and a lot of learning to trust that you can be in multiple locations at one time. And the way I taught people to do that is, first of all, can you entertain the concept that all points in space-time exist simultaneously? And can you entertain the concept that space and time go together, or they can't exist without each other? Now, after we meditate on that, then what is a location? What is a vibration? Is any of this real? So we start by the bigger picture of what you think is real, what you think isn't real. And then we go into the parameters of, okay, so now we get the big picture and we're all so enlightened and we've learned a lot. Well done, everyone. Now, how do we look at something that's on the other side of this planet and look at it accurately and report back? And there are many ways to do that, but initially we start by training people to trick their minds. I have an exercise which I learned when I was 9 years old that I teach to all of my people, which is you find a wall, blank wall, and draw a little spot about the size of a dime. And you want to sit down and you want it to be roughly eye length. And you want it to be at a place where it's comfortable, that you don't need to look at it with your glasses, you don't squint or whatever. And I tell people to stare at that for 9 minutes a day for 9 days to begin with, and to stare at it and just think of it as potentially a portal. And just, that's all. And go, what would it be like if through this portal I could see what's on special at my local bakery? What would it be like if I could see what's on special at the local supermarket? What would it be like if I could see what my husband's up to this afternoon? So you trick the mind into opening, making this little tiny black portal. Oh, I can see anything I want through this. And after about 9 days of doing that for 9 minutes a day, you begin to think, I really think I saw somebody walk across that wall on the other side. You see what I'm getting at? So it's a lot of tedious and repetitive exercises to give your brain this repetitive short circuit thing of you can see anything anywhere if you just focus. So that's the first step.
That's amazing. I've never heard that before, and I've talked to quite a few remote viewers.
I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the best remote viewer in the world. There are people who specialize in that and nothing else. But it's not a skill that's beyond the reach of your average person. It's just training.
How do you define shaman? And the reason I ask is because to me it means like you're with a Native American medicine man or something.
The term shaman actually comes from the Siberian term, shaman. And a shaman is somebody who is born into a bloodline that knows the ways of their indigenous people and knows how to use and work that land for the betterment of its people. And within that grouping of shamans, there are the ones who are the healers and the counselors. And there are the ones who are healers and counselors who then go on to develop a different skill set so that they can queen and obliterate the king and queen's enemies. The latter is the bloodline that I come from. So had I been born in a different time in the hills of Armenia, I'm rather glad I didn't actually, I might well be the local wise woman of the village, dispensing advice and essential oils and saving marriages and reading people's upside down Turkish coffee cups that they would bring, So that's what a shaman is. But the world has changed. Some of us can't be in our indigenous countries. Some of us are born outside of our culture. So in today's world, my interpretation of shaman, and Jeff, I have thought long and hard about if I should lose that title, for branding, as it were. But a shaman today is somebody whose sole focus is on the refinement of their personality. Somebody who really seeks to represent God and to be a clear channel for cosmic energy and is essentially a spiritual counselor.
Are you still in contact with reptilians or any other ETs?
Reptilians, not so much. The only time reptilians come to me is if I'm going to be doing an energy work session on somebody who they have embedded their soft, and then they will guide me as to how to maneuver that. But as for extraterrestrials, I regularly, twice a month, go to a location which I will not disclose, and talk to people who are in the Palladian fleet. I talk regularly with Commander Hatton, and I talk on occasion with Commander Ashtar, should he graciously choose to make an appearance, and various other extraterrestrials who are currently on patrol protecting Earth as she goes through this very difficult ascension period.
When you say you go to this place, is this physically or astral traveling?
No. I get in my car and drive there.
Really?
I get in my car and drive there because that I work with there, that's all we do together. We have a safe space, an illuminated space, a very remote space that is completely of a higher vibration than anywhere in the environs. And we can talk safely with our Palladian friends who are very highly evolved, but do have a sense of humor speak all the earth languages, and I'm going to have to say are a little bit miffed with us because it's taking us so long, to get the bad guys out and put the good guys in.
They can't really do anything for us then. All they can do is advise.
Yes, there is the prime directive. You can boldly go where no man has gone before, but there's still a prime directive. Interfere in the steps that a race needs to take to gain ascension and enlightenment. So they do advise. There are members of the extraterrestrial fleet who are in contact with players in the good government, in the light government, the true government. Our planet is vibrationally too low for any Palladian to be able to come down in physical form. So, we see they're 10 to 12 feet tall and they're all gorgeous. And they are physical, of course. Otherwise, they wouldn't need a spaceship. They're extraterrestrials, but they're beings, they're humanoids. They eat food. And I do understand on occasion, once in a while, they do like a drinky poo. So it's not as if they're too far off from us, but they can't physically land on the planet. The race that can are the Arcturians. And they have the ability to make humanoid bodies and learn to inhabit them and operate them. And even with them, it says they need about 6 months of training to be able to adopt a human body. So there are people, once in a while, if people, you look around at all the stuff, etc. Once in a while, you look at somebody and they look really different. I'd take another look and look at it through your third and fourth eye. And perhaps you might see a different form beyond that human form that they've adopted.
So I'm assuming that Commander Ashtar is an Arcturian if you're physically meeting with him?
No, he's a Palladian. I'm not physically meeting with them.
But you
They're
do
not
go to
physically
physical.
coming down. We're having a physical communication.
You go somewhere and have a physical communication, but then how do you do that?
It's not, they don't land physically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What's very important, why we go out to this undisclosed remote, is that we have protected that space so that nobody can listen in. Nobody from the reptilians, nobody from this government, nobody from any government or any agency. And it's a very high vibration space, and we can't stay there for that long either. I mean, you can't camp out for days. So.
Would you say it is high vibration enough for them to come down on the planet?
No, not yet.
So how are you communicating with them? Like through a device, or do you go there and then astral travel?
We basically astral travel and meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Both parties.
What have they revealed to you about the status of the planet and where we're going? And what can you share?
Sure. Well, first off, mankind is about a good 2 decades behind schedule for its, ascension. And I think we all know that. They are rather confused about how easily the human mind has been propagandized. And I'm not going to say they don't look down on us. In fact, they have a great deal of respect for us because, one of them said, your planet is like the wrong end of Pittsburgh on a Saturday night when all the bars have closed. Kind of how they see us, but they don't look down on us. What they find extremely disappointing is we seem to have lost our spiritual oomph. We seem to have lost the fact that we are pure potential, having individualized experiences, as humans. And one of the things I think they're looking forward to is when we understand that religion was not necessarily, we're not supposed to be religious still after all this time. We should have evolved into more of a direct knowing with God. Now, all of that said, that's how they feel. How do they see the planet evolving? They see it as a done deal, that in the continuum, we have destroyed the thing that we call the Cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, and that we have all reclaimed our minds from the darkness, and we have destroyed the first couple of layers of the hive mind matrix, and they see us definitely going back into and understanding what sovereignty means. They see quite, well, we're seeing it now. They do see a religious war, but we're seeing that in Europe now, and we're trying to prevent that happening here in America. And they're what they keep saying is, oh my God, it's going to be the Crusades all over again, you know. But they see that once that's bled out, once that's finished, so much of the matrix is going to be shattered that mankind is going to wake up and go, oh my God, we've had our heads up our arse for so long. Now we can take a breath. And then there's going to be a period of confusion and disenfranchisement. And then they see that we will lock into what they call the lower fourth dimension, which is the first realm where mankind is no longer controlled by the false ego programming, and the first steps to actual self-realization. And they very much they can for us to understand what sovereignty is, excuse me, and to understand what self-realization is, and to own the fact that we are gods in bods, because they very much want us to join the Intergalactic Federation, because we're about the only planet in this solar system that hasn't joined. And again, we don't want to be the wrong end of Pittsburgh on a Saturday night. We want to evolve. They're frustrated with us, primarily because they have to do so many long rotations. Once we hit that stabilization of the lower fourth dimension, they can just keep a skeleton crew here. And once they can land boots on the ground, that's mankind's signal that we've made it. And whenever darkness appears, it will be immediately revealed and it will be dissolved. So they have nothing but benevolence for us. And they're helping in every way that they are allowed to. Boots on the ground, doing some major things for us.
It sounded like you said that we're about 2 decades behind. So perhaps in about 20 years, this will happen?
I'm hoping sooner. You know, we should have, you know, when everybody was going on about 2012, they all expected something amazing to happen or whatever.
Yeah.
I would think that's what we're thinking now, that probably around 10 years, maybe 12 years, we should see the first cultural exchange centers. But you see, Jeff, for that to happen, for them to actually land, if they were all to land now, the bad guys would go, see, we told you the aliens are going to take over the world, and la, 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 la. You know, for that to happen, mankind needs to have settled down and accepted how corrupt it had become and how far, all of that stuff. And people will have gone back to their countries, their own countries, and explored sovereignty. And we will have what we want, which is respect and unity through diversity, but all in their correct locations. When all that settles down, that is when the vibration of the planet will change sufficiently that they can land their smaller craft here. So that's going to take, you know, we could all wake up, corruption exposed, everyone's awake, oh my God, blah, 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 la, 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 everything settles down. It's still going to take about a decade for all of it to smooth out until it was like taken for granted that that's now history. So we'll see in our lifetime, I promise you.
As a remote viewer, what have you seen in our near future, let's say over the next 6 months?
I see bloodshed. I see the people finally being taken to the precipice and saying that since my government, and you can put in a lot of different names of governments here, is not responsive to the needs of this nation, and they're obviously going towards some sort of one world government or whatever, the people are actually going to take up arms, and there will be blood, and there will be violence, and there will be not an insignificant amount of necessary chaos. And then the good people in the military, because there's cadres of good and bad in all of the militaries in every country of the world, because the people that we're fighting against had unlimited pockets. One of the worst things has been, one of the most difficult things has been trying to separate them from their source of income. So once we have sufficiently, and we are taking the long and winding road on this, once we have sufficiently routed out the bad guys in the military do stand ready then to take over these countries that have collapsed and say, we're here in the interim just to make sure that the necessary removal of certain parties to certain places happens smoothly, and we will then bring back our civilian governments. And in every remote view that I've done, with Germany being an exception, because Germany, in my remote views, is very hesitant once the military is in to let it out, which is very interesting. I don't make any sense of that, but that's what I'm seeing. So with that being a possible exception, and it will happen, Germany will come around, but it may take longer than other places. Then I see every single government returning back to a civilian run government. And again, even after we've exposed everything, it's going to take a good decade for everything to be accepted as good and done. But I promise everyone, from what I see and what my sources see, and my sources are infinitely more intelligent, awake, aware, and brilliant than this little humanoid is, we make it. We make it. It's going to be rough. And many people will, I think we're going to suffer a not insignificant mental health crisis in this country for various reasons, which I won't go into, but there are multiple reasons for that. And the shattering of the illusion is like the cherry on the cake, where people go, what life have I been living all this time? What BS have I bought into? But we make it, Jeff. We make it. And it's all good.
That's good news.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of lost you for a second. It kind of dropped. But did you say for the next 6 months it's going to be rough?
Yes. Oh, and more than that. Of course it's going to be rough. You know, there are people that are being hunted that have done bad things. They don't want to be caught. The thread that unites evil is about to be pulled, and it has saturated everything on this planet. That's going to be a big pill to swallow for people who live in La La Land and believe what they hear just because it's broadcast. There are people that meet once a year in a place that want to discuss how they're going to rule us. And astrally projecting into one of these places is because their shamans are reptilians. And I personally, in my cadre anyway, hold a little mini record for having infiltrated for a full 3.5 minutes into one of these meetings before one of their shamans found me and ejected me. And just a word of warning to any shamans out there. I'm sure you're all highly skilled and you know what you're doing. Do not go up against a reptilian shaman ever, under any circumstances, unless you are ready to meet your maker and you're okay with it. The reptilian shamans have a way of introducing a vibration of terror into you that will literally freeze your spinal fluid. So that's what I was talking about sort of, earlier. You break in, you listen and collate as much information as you can about what's going on, and then report back. But when I was ejected, because of the shock to my system that was given to me by by the reptilian shamans. I mean, terror like you have never experienced in your life, frozen in fear, unable to even fathom where you are in space-time. So don't go messing, children, don't go messing with things you don't understand.
In my opinion, you are speaking about that there is some ultimate evil that is persisting on this planet that's going to be unveiled.
Yes.
Can you share what is this ultimate evil that you're speaking of?
Evil isn't a thing. It's a mindset of domination and control. It's a misalignment. People who believe that their interests are different or separate from the rest of the world, people who are overly idealistic, people who cannot join a debating society and respectfully listen to multiple viewpoints. All of these people are susceptible to, they could all fall prey to the thing that which we call evil. And from a shaman's point of view, it is a disorientation from your spirituality. So we are designed as gods in bods. We're designed as humans to channel the divine, the cosmos, directly, supreme cosmic intelligence. I like to call it the allness. We're supposed to channel that directly. And if you are in alignment with the divine, one assumes that on a physical planet, you will turn that into a utopia. And from that utopia, the vibration of serenity, unconditional love, which isn't a thing, love isn't a thing. Don't listen to the love songs, that's all rubbish. It's the vibration of creation. It says you're safe to create, go create, right? In that vibration, it's not just, swimming and eating bonbons and, oh, isn't life wonderful? That opens you up to higher realms of consciousness and higher realms of thinking and to absolute expansion of consciousness to create realms that we couldn't even Isaac Asimov couldn't think of them, The glory of God, how brilliant it is and how unlimited and magnificent it is. Evil goes in there, throws a spanner in the work and disorients you. And this false ego programming, self-doubt, lack of self-worth, self-loathing, is actually a software program written by a reptilian faction that's put into the human DNA, RNA to keep it off kilter. Because if you believe, beyond all shadow of doubt, that you come from a perfect cosmic intelligence that in no shape or form would create anything imperfect, then you are an unlimited being. You are that cosmic space adventurer. Why would you doubt it? It's in every cell, nanocell of your being. It's in every fiber of the thread of your being. Somebody has to come in and throw a spanner in the works and say, this little lovely planet here, it's very pretty. I don't want God to have it. I want my people to have it. And, there's such a thing as terraforming, a thing as sprinkling the air with certain things that could facilitate that. Many of the things that people casually dismiss around them are part of that agenda of evil. But there isn't one evil entity. It goes, right, everybody works for me. The reason that people I call the bad guys, I refer to them as Luciferian, is because they worship Lucifer. And they worship Lucifer, who was in one of the first archangels. Lucifer, Lusaber, Armenian, the bringer, magnificent archangel. When we had physical form, eons down the line, right? Angels, and then physical form, he had genetic material to play with, and he was a bit of a scientist. And then he became a bit of a mad scientist. This is the shaman story. I'm trying to explain why these people worship Lucifer. So he had all this genetic material to play with, and he became a bit of a mad scientist. He didn't do it because he was evil. Evil didn't exist. Everything was in harmony and co-creation with Source. But he thought, I've got all this stuff to play with. So why don't I take a horse's ass and put the body of a man on top? All of your myth has some sort of truth to it. And if you actually research very early Egyptian history and do some meditation with it, you will see that there were many experiments on this planet about what kind of bodies to form. So anyway, going back to Lucifer, he did things with the genetic material that created beings that were not in harmony. And when you're not in harmony, that's anxiety and that's fear. And he decided that he didn't need God because he could create life. He couldn't, of course. What he could do was move, blobs of flesh or whatever together and do these scientific experiments. But he turned his back on God and became his own God. And that's where you get there was the war in heaven, and all the other archangels went up to him and said, listen, Lou, this is not good. Did you run this by the boss? What are you doing here? And at that point, he had gotten into his madness and said, no, I'm going to create life. I don't need God. And so the people that we call the bad guy, of course, eventually he was contained and the other angels won and God always wins and all that. But the people that worship Lucifer, they have turned their backs on God. So how do they get energy? Because they can't buy into the serenity and the unconditional love. They have to create a different energy field for them to feed off. And that's called fear. So when they messed with the DNA RNA and made it so that the amygdala wouldn't just give us a heightened sense of awareness, it would flood with fear and freeze us, they did that with a specific purpose, which was to eventually, the long-term plan, of course, is to make humans transhumans and then post-humans to terraform the planet into something more suitable for a different race altogether. That is the plan, and it almost worked, but it's not going to. So I hope that explains a little bit why these people are called Luciferians.
If we're going to join our galactic brothers and sisters and be kind of like a Star Trek society, wouldn't we have to eventually evolve into a one world government? And if so, a lot of people see that as a bad thing.
It really depends on the level of control. I don't see that we are actually going to evolve into a one world government central control. I think that maybe for another 1,000 years, we will still have ethnic color. We will still have cultural color. We will still explore different, culture with different locations, etc. What I see happening is that as mankind self-realizes, we share one common social philosophy, which is that we are all cosmic space adventurers. We are all created by something that is unfathomable, that we can't even explain, perhaps at this level of awareness, and that we understand that through that true, by understanding our sovereignty and our true nature, that we're here to evolve and expand. We will share a common social philosophy. Perhaps in time, it would be easier as that progresses, where we all have one currency, but and maybe, one rule of law, but that the bad guys wanted, which is a slave camp. It would be because mankind has self-realized and realizes it doesn't need a big government. Libertarianism really is spirituality, is the philosophy of spirituality. We're going to just realize we don't need all this bureaucracy and we don't need all these departments. We certainly don't need all these taxes, and we don't need people telling us where we can fish, how much we can fish, and all of this. That is, I think of it more as we're morphing, Jeff, into a one world philosophy. And then we'll see where that goes from there about the actual currency and all of that. But there'll be no religion. I mean, that can't be. It's immature. It's a halfway house we should have walked away from years ago. There's this adherence to our prophets and looking at the world through this one little book. My prophet is better than your prophet. And it's immature. It's marginally embarrassing. We're going to move on from that to one common social philosophy, in my opinion.
How do you explain these ancient sites on the planet, like Pumapunku, the pyramids, and other places?
I would explain them by saying there's more between heaven and earth than is dreamt of in our philosophy and certainly in our history. Our civilization didn't start with Sumeria. We've had multiple civilizations on this planet. That information is in the Akashic records. Give us another 10 years to 12 years for mankind to start the process of self-realization and actually going back to objectivity, common sense, and those records will be available to us. And then all of those sites will make sense.
Do you think that we had previous civilizations that were highly advanced and then we destroyed ourselves?
Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. Some of these ancient sites clearly were not made by Stone Age man. Laser cut rocks, things that align with certain planets and stars in a certain way. No, we've been visited. I'm not necessarily, civilization lasted hundreds of thousands of years, but we have been visited by extraterrestrials who have used this place as beacons. All of these stones, the henges, the cairnstones, all of those. They've come here. They've put beacons on this planet. We've had sizable civilizations come here, some of them to keep to themselves, using Earth as a monitor planet. But yeah, we did not start with, the stories of Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar. There was things before that. We are very good, I think most humanoid species are very good at eventually reaching a stage where they blow themselves up. It all happens when you lose your sense of divinity. You cannot allow anything to interfere with the fact that you are a pure channel for spirit. You allow yourself to disorient from that, and that's when the corruption sets in. And no civilization lasts forever. Hey, borders change, everything changes. I'm looking forward to the releasing of that information, by the way. One of the main reasons I don't want to have any more NDEs. I want to stay here and watch this beautiful thing that's playing out right now. The awakening of mankind. I mean, damn, bizarre. Wow.
Well, who's the one that's withholding that information and will release it?
No one's withholding it. We just don't have the level of awareness to understand it. It's like you go to the library and you don't see the wing that contains the information. It's there. There are people in it, but you can't even see it.
Do you think that us as spiritual beings that occupy human bodies were seated here first? And the same with other races, like reptilians were originally seated or spawned in their universe, or Pleiadians or Arcturians, etc.
I wanted to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you asking me if humanoids are unique to this universe?
What I'm trying to ask is, us that are the spiritual beings that inhabit these human bodies, when we first were created or separated from Creator Source, was it here on Earth?
No. Earth is one of the later universes. So when we started having souls, I mean, in the very beginning of the very first physical realms, once they figured out they needed a sun for warmth and rotation and all of this stuff, and the planets were allowed to grow, and then they were dying, and they realized angel souls had to inhabit the planet. Once they got the mechanics of how a universe should work and rotate and function, there came up, plants and animals and gooey things and whatever. This is not this universe, it's the very first universe. Then there came a time, and I will speak in shaman language. A quantum physicist would explain it differently, I'm sure. There came a time where the God of that universe decided that a higher level of sentient experience was needed. Higher universal mankind, which we call humans, higher universal mankind. And so the God of that first universe made of itself multiple root souls. A root soul is the first soul that a god creates from its self. And he created multiple root souls, and they figured out androgyny didn't work, so they made male and female, the atom and the ion root souls. And he had them actually train. I know this sounds weird, but he had them actually train in something resembling the Star Trek holodeck that we would relate to. Like, you're going to go down for the first time to be a higher universal man and woman onto this planet. This is the very first time. We've got to get it right. We've got to make sure it's all going to go well. And what happened, these root souls were so excited that one day during training, the vibration of excitement transported them down to the planet. And sort of God went, WT, people, I mean, you're not ready. And that's where, from shaman lore, we get the story of Adam and Eve, which is not story. But, Adam goes, oh my God, I'm naked. I've covered myself up. It's the, we went there before our time thing. So that's the story of how the root souls started. And in time, those root souls made of themselves other souls and other souls and other souls. And then a population. Okay. And then in time, what happened was when people have had enough of that first physical incarnation, they just went back into the Godhead. But as populations grew and as people started having their own thoughts, life became quite traumatic down the line. So we started to create these realms, which we call heavens, and attach one to each planet so that if souls had a rough time, rather than taking all that roughness into the purity of source energy, it could go into rest and recreation and purification onto these realms. Okay. And then you can repeat that with every universe. The God of the universe starts with root souls. This universe, according to my understanding, is one of the later universes to be created. This solar system, this galaxy, is one of the later ones within that. And this planet is one of the last planets to be properly populated. There is a legend in shaman lore that says that it's always been God's prettiest planet, and it's always been his favorite, and reluctantly allowed it to be populated. Read into that what you will.
Well, speaking of population, our population on this planet is growing very quickly, and now we're up to or over 8 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Are we all here to witness something, or what do you think's going on?
I think consciously or unconsciously, the souls know that the souls also know that a great many of that 8 billion population isn't going to accept the changes and will probably have a mental health issue and die. So a lot of personal soul-to-soul relationships are going to be wrapped up in the next 10 to 20 years. When people who refuse to accept the higher dimension way of living, when they die and go to heaven, if they are still, even after the instruction and the, whatever else that they do up there, and heaven is a wonderful and very busy place, if they are not ready for a fourth dimensional incarnation, they're not going to be able to come back to this world. They're going to be allowed the opportunity to go to another upper third dimension world to continue their karmic evolution at the pace that they choose. So within that, and many people will never come back to this realm again because they came in time with it and now get a little reward of going elsewhere. So on a soul-to-soul level, Jeff, there are millions of people that know they're never, ever going to interact again for maybe millennia. So there's a lot of people incarnating for that. But the biggest reason is it is extremely rare to actually be in physical life, to be awake and aware on a planet that is mired in 3D and is about to reach the self-realization factor. It's a very exciting time. And souls want to witness that, whether they're coming in service to it or coming in contrast to it. People want to be here. And I have no problem with this planet can easily take 12 billion people if we manage our resources properly, in my opinion.
Well, Annie, we have covered a lot of ground, and I think there's still a lot more to talk about, but I'm running out of time. So if people want to find out more about you, what is your website?
Oh, go to my website, people. It's aniavedissian.com, aniavedissian.com, and you'll learn all about me, whatever. And if anything is of interest, drop me a line. We can we can talk about it. There's a big world out there. We should explore it together.
Is there something that you're working on that you want people to know about?
You might want to pop into my podcast, Metaphysical Martini. It's on Rumble. And it's a question and answer format, and we discuss all sorts of things under the sun. I think you might enjoy that. It's very amusing and very entertaining. And there's a cocktail at the end of it, because after all, it is called Metaphysical Martini. What I'm working on is helping people to self-realize. And as we would say back in England, helping us to take our heads out of our asses and see what's really going on in the world. All we want, Jeff, is a happy, productive, functional life and the odd cocktail. No one wants more than that.
I usually finish up with a last positive message, but I feel like you just gave it to me.
It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for being my guest. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.